want to experience the NHC, you have to find a way to get to Hawthorne as many times as you can. You absolutely have to. The reason I think the Hawthorne contests are the best value in contests, there's no entry fee. Hawthorne is giving away seats. You have to play in those events because, we all know what the cost of an online NHC seat is.
Got some free entries, come out to Hawthorne, so I made my first trip and had a great time.
If you're playing contests, Hawthorne is a great spot to be. There's no takeout of the contest. It's a great place for horse players to either qualify here or play in some live money contests.
And good afternoon, racing fans. Welcome to Hawthorne Racecourse for a Thursday afternoon of thoroughbred action. Jim Miller and Emily Gullickson up here in our studio today. And Emily, it is a bright, sunshiny day here at Hawthorne. The fields weren't huge, but there's only a couple of scratches on the card, so not too bad overall. Good competitive day of racing yesterday, but I'll tell you, you just saw the commercials for the NHC. An exciting tournament coming up this Sunday, the Horse Players Invitational. It's an awesome field assembled, too.
It really is. 56, and then we're going to add 3 more from the qualifiers from the Saturday one-day tournament. So there's still possibility for everybody out there to get involved. The Saturday tournament, it's a $500 buy-in, and again, lots of prizes, including 3 spots in the Hawthorne Invitational. But you mentioned the field, 56 players, all quality. We watched a commercial, and it's a who's who. Pretty much every shot is somebody that's going to be coming out and playing, and I know people are getting excited. I am. I'm doing my research and getting ready for the show.
It's funny when you're looking at these guys and you say, okay, well, this guy's a Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge winner. This is a Pegasus winner, an NHC champ, an NHC Tour champ. I mean, these are guys that are all really good players coming together. They're going to play a $2,500 bankroll. There's mandatory races. There's optional races as well. It's going to end with a race on the turf course here at Hawthorne for the contest. But you're going to be busy all day long. Ed DeRose is coming into town to help you out because not only are you going to be looking at races, you're going to be running all over the room trying to find who's making the moves and kind of what they're doing with that bankroll. Last year we saw everybody kind of just hung around that starting point for a while and nobody made that big move. I'm expecting with this field, somebody's just going to have a huge day though.
I think so too, and I think adding the other optional races is really going to mix things up a little bit. And yeah, last year, I mean, the scores were lower, so I think that kind of played into it a little bit. But yeah, I think the added optionals, the time, we have the seasonal change, everything's just a little bit different, and that just makes a difference. We'll see, and then we're going to go through today's card. We'll talk about the Hawthorne Derby, which could be an optional race for some people to play. And yeah, looking forward to it and doing a little bit more different. I was doing some, like I said, I was doing some research, watching last year what I wanted to do different, getting feedback from social media, like what do people want to see? I mean, again, part of this is we're creating the show to gain more interest in the game, right, and get people interested about tournaments. So it's like, what do you guys want to see? Like, what do you want to watch? You know, and that's me as a content creator, what I want to bring.
And what I like seeing is the strategy, what people do going into races before, how they may shift throughout the course of a day based on if something doesn't work out the way they want, or based on how something does if it does work out the way they want. Because say you hit huge with a couple optionals early and that mandatory race, and all of a sudden you're sitting there around 10 grand and nobody's within 5,000 of you. Do you back off or do you just go for it to put it away? So I'll be curious to see, because there's NHC seats on the line, Pegasus Challenge, there's the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. There's so many different options out there. It's a cool contest. It's worthy of this field, though, for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. And then, again, there's another $1 million bonus to go to the NHC. So there's a lot of incentives for the players. And I think this being an invitational, I don't really like to get away from, like, the bragging rights aspect. But I think having this field, kind of knowing who the people are, everybody's invited in, I think there is some of that. And then there's obviously the competition local. You know, when we talked to Frank when I did the interview, and he's like, I just wanted somebody from Chicago, you know. So there's a little bit of that going on, too.
And it is, but it's very cool. It's going to be a great location out of Crestwood. You're going to have so much going on. As always, check into the Hawthorne YouTube channel or Horse Racing Nation, and you can find all of it for the live stream taking place on Sunday. May even carry a little bit later, maybe a little bit past 5 o'clock for race number 7, but that will be the final race of the Hawthorne Invitational with the live stream on Sunday. All right, you mentioned the Hawthorne Derby. It goes as race number 5 on Sunday, and it was one of those things that was kind of weird for the field because you look around and you kind of see, okay, it was maybe understandable why we didn't have a big field. Last night, Canterbury just had a $100,000 3-year-old race on the turf. They had 5 there. Monmouth has a $100,000 3-year-old race on the turf on Sunday. It's that time of year, so it's hard. So you see, there's only 6 in this spot. What makes it interesting, though, is you're going to have some that are just going to say, okay, I'm going to the Mike Maker horse, the horse that is running these stake races and really good on the inside, and the horse that's going to be the heavy favorite in here.
Like that little pun, by the way.
Yeah, really good. And then you look near the outside, and you get a horse like Act a Fool, who has the benefit of not racing on Lasix, and he can't run on Lasix in the Hawthorne Derby, but has never stepped foot on the turf. Or Out of Deductions, a horse that you and I talked about when it broke its maiden. It was ultra impressive. So I guess let's start with the one really good in here. Again, this one from the barn of trainer Mike Maker. Just the last 2 starts have been on Lasix. So early on in its career, this horse was racing without Lasix and actually raced just fine in those first 3 starts. I would say a deserving favorite. We'll just see how heavy a favoritism it goes with the one really good.
Yeah, I would say a deserving favorite. The Lasix factor kind of seems like a non-factor for the point that you mentioned out. He's run just as well on or off Lasix, so it's pretty neutral. I've kind of found that across the board. And his most recent starts, they've been an allowance company, but they've been competitive races. You had the Keeneland allowance coming off the 162-day layoff, and kind of knowing Maker, it's probably a race they were just looking to get the horse a race, still ran a competitive speed figure, and then ran in that off-the-turf race on May 14th, which is worth a mention because not only was it 9 furlong distance, it was on the main track, and it was a pretty good effort for really good because he was wide up close to the pace and then kind of lost some ground late, but again, he was on that fast pace, he was wide, and the winner of that race came back to win the Pegasus Stakes last weekend, Salute the Stars, and Salute the Stars was heavily bet down in that off-the-turf race from the 12-to-1 morning line. He was favored, so he's very well met. I take nothing away from really good last out. I think he's a deserving favorite. I think he's the horse to beat in the Hawthorne Derby.
Yeah, and the biggest question for him is going to be kind of what they do running style-wise. I think he probably does lay a little bit closer like he did in that last out just because of the lack of speed in here, but the one really good, definitely the horse to beat. I laid him as a 7-5 favorite. Now, the 5 horse is Act a Fool. This one from the barn of Larry Ravelli. This will be his 2nd Derby of the weekend because he has the Ohio Derby on Saturday with 2 fills there. Going to focus on that one at Thistledown as well. But Act a Fool, that first start out came with Lasix. That came on the poly. And you don't know if it was the Lasix, if it was the poly, the first start, whatever it was.
Extra wide trip, running against the flow. Yeah, he had everything against him.
Everything was against him there. But I'll tell you, he came over here to Hawthorne, and he has done everything right in each of those last 3 starts. Showed speed in all of them. One going away. I guess the biggest question for him will be how he handles the turf course.
Yeah, the surface, dealing with Larry Belly, very confident trainer, can train on the turf, the synthetic, obviously the main track. They've had intention to run him on the turf. We had that trainer scratch where they actually were able to get in that main track race on June 4th. My question really is, this is going to be just such a class test for him, that even though he has that speed and he has, as you said, he's been improving race to race, he's also had a lot of favorable factors in those wins. He was dominant breaking his maiden here, kind of stood out over the field that day. And then I think he caught a bit of the track profile back on April 9th where he was lone, had some trouble at the start and was able to get that clear lead. And then he was able to make a very easy lead, another lone flow trip last out. So I think he's going to find a little bit more pressure in here and just a little bit more class of this field.
And the big question for him is going to be if anybody provides him company up there on the front end. He's going to take action, though, off those last 3 races. But then there's the 6 Out of Deductions, who could be the sleeper in this race. This one from the barn of trainer Chris Block, Orlando Mojica back in the saddle again today. But I'll tell you, when this horse ran back on May the 21st, you and I both said it was an ultra impressive race because the horse had an outside draw that day, settled back. When the horse took off in the lane, it definitely took off, just kind of ran away with that field. I tend to wonder if the horse can step up a little bit off that event.
Yeah, I would think so. And I think his form was validated a little bit when all choked up, came back to win, break his maiden, and did so with a strong effort in his next start. So I think that there's more upside with Out of Deductions. They were probably looking towards this spot and having that foundation on the turf, but kind of the same thing. They're still going to get a little bit of a class test with the one horse in the field, really good. But other than that, I mean, there's no knocks at this point.
Yeah, and then we'll put up the remainder of the field for the race because you have the same trainer for horses 2, 3, and 4 in here. It's Manny Perez for Glockenberg LLC. Now, Glockenberg's had a very good meet. I believe they're our leading owner. Manny's had himself a very good meet. I had a hard time trying to figure out what I wanted to do odds-wise here because Wolf Hunter, that last start, wasn't a bad race on the turf. Russian Hammer ran on the turf in the last out, but the race 2 back was a really good sprint. And the Money Agent is lightly raced, but it wasn't a terrible race in the all choked up race. I don't know class-wise if they can contend with the rest of the field, but it wouldn't surprise me if maybe one of these jumps up underneath and runs a decent race to maybe get into the top 3.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Manny's a great sport, running 3 horses
Yeah.
in here, and I think, the way that he sends out horses, he's confident and takes chances and will put his horses in there and give them their best chance to win, and if they're not good enough, they're not good enough, and you love that from trainers and love that sportsmanship. I think Russian Hammer will be out there early, kind of pushing the pace. That's how he broke his maiden, and that was that sprint race. And then it was actually a better than looked race in that May 28th allowance. That was a sneaky good effort, making a move through traffic. Just speed figure wise, a little bit softer. You talk about Wolf Hunter and Money Agent. They're still both maidens. They're coming out of that same June 8th common race. Wolf Hunter, I think, was a little bit more fancied of the 2 on the day, but Money Agent caught my eye. Just in the paddock, I thought he made a very positive physical appearance. He broke slow. He showed run, all things considered, and I think there's more upside. So looking at this race, recognizing that Really Good is a legitimate favorite in here. Active Fool is probably one I'm going to try to get out of there just because I like a favorite, try to get a little bit creative. Money Agent's the one I'm going to throw in there, and then out of deduction. So at least that's like the one shot, but yeah, I think it's a good race. Sometimes those good races come up even with compact fields.
Well, and you even saw that race over at Canterbury last night. You had a little bit of an upset there, and you've seen some of the races, even with smaller fields, they get bunched up, and then it becomes a rider's race. So when you turn into a lane, be curious to see how things unfold. But that goes as race number 5 on Sunday, the Hawthorne Derby. All right, let's look at today's card here as we're 22 minutes to post. Slightly shortened post parades today due to the warmer weather. So we had that yesterday. We kind of backed off the time that the horses were out on the track just because it is a little bit warmer outside. But race number 1 goes